Welcome to the Life with Joey Cavo podcast. I'm Joey Cavo. Today we have our guest today is Phyllis Leavitt, and she is a psychotherapist and has been for over 30 years and wrote a new book called American Therapy, a new approach to hope and healing for a nation in crisis, about the urgent need for addressing both our individual and collective mental health as the greatest resource for healing our growing divisiveness and escalating violence. Phyllis, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me here with you, Joey.
Okay, so tell me what led you to be to where you're at right now?
Well, in a nutshell, it was my own journey through healing trauma in my own childhood that eventually led me to go to therapy when I was in my 30s. And that healing journey was really life-changing for me. I had no idea when I was younger that our early conditioning has anything to do with, some of the struggles or challenges that we face as adults, or the ways that sometimes life isn't working out well because we're being run on automatic reactions and patterns of behavior that don't serve us because we learned things that were dysfunctional when we were little. So I went to therapy. It really changed my life. I became a psychotherapist, and I studied a lot about individual intrapsychic dynamics and family dynamics. And at some point along the way, it became really clear to me, because I worked with so much abuse and neglect, not only my own personal experience, but with so many people suffering from dysfunctional and abusive family dynamics here in America, and that I saw in my practice, that it became really clear to me that all groups operate on some form of family dynamics, including our country. And if individuals can heal their own dynamics and become better, healthier, more loving, more cooperative, and functional members of their own families, and create healthier relationships in their own lives, there's no reason why the family of America can't do the same thing if we have the psychological understanding and the tools to try to heal the worst of our dysfunction on a collective level. So that's what really caused me to write America in Therapy, and it was really to sort of call out in non-partisan, non-judgmental, but decisive way what the dysfunction is that I see in America today, at least some of it on a mental health level, and what psychology has to offer to help us come back together safely and more caringly, and with more humane treatment of one another, and with a commitment to nonviolence and peace.
Okay. All right. So you wrote the book leading towards kind of bridging the gap of bringing the country together because of the politics that was going on around here. So tell me a little bit more in reference into the book besides what I just said.
Yeah, so what I talk about is because, as a therapist, and many therapists can tell you exactly what I'm going to say, and that is, we see what some of the roots of violence are. We see what the dynamics are in a dysfunctional family where people are hurt or ignored or left out or deprived of the kind of support and resources that they need. And people become symptomatic when they're hurt by other people if they don't get a chance to escape or get help. And so that happens in an individual family. People become depressed, or they become highly anxious, or they become addicted, or they become people pleasers, or they become fearful, or they identify with the aggressor and they become like the aggressor themselves, or they feel paralyzed and helpless. And these are all different symptoms of being hurt by other people. And I think as a general population, we don't always know that the dysfunction that many people demonstrate in the world, including becoming highly destructive or exploitive or murderous even, that they're inside that person is a victim that's unhealed. No one is born a bad person. No one is born exploitive or murderous or discriminatory. We learn these things from the dysfunction of the people around us, and we can unlearn them. And that's the beauty of the best psychotherapy, is that it brings a non-judgmental healing perspective to both the wounds that we have suffered ourselves and the wounds we might have inflicted on other people. I've seen many, many people who have come to therapy because they were abused as children, or there was a lot of rage in their homes, or there was a lot of neglect in their homes. I've seen a lot of people come to therapy, and when they have a chance to heal the wounds that they suffered as children, they actually become better parents and better employers and better coworkers and better partners. Because when we have a chance to heal, we automatically become more loving and cooperative. And I've never seen that not happen. And so if that can happen on an individual level, a country is made up of individuals. So it could happen on a collective level if we wanted it, if we employed some of the best healing skills that we know from the world of psychotherapy. And do I know that in the climate that we live in today, that's kind of a far cry, that it may sound like magical thinking or unrealistic, or it just couldn't happen. And to some extent, there are a lot of forces against healing in our country, because many people gain power and profit from employing dynamics with other people that are not healthy for the people they're impacting. And I think we all really want love and belonging. And so my call is really for us to become informed, heal ourselves the best we can, and become voices for that change in our own lives on a grassroots level. I think it's possible. I think that there's a lot of challenges that we face ahead. I don't think I'm just an idealist. I think there's a lot of work to be done. But what I do know from being a psychotherapist is that what brings people to therapy and has them do the work is when they're in enough pain, when enough isn't working in their lives. And my hope is that we feel the pain of what's happening in our society today, and that we really want something better on a collective level.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to bring out the questions from our number one fan, our number one supporter of the podcast that you received ahead of time. Her name is American Fox. And so the first question she had for you is and this is kind of a repeat of what I had you do earlier. What got you interested in the field of mental health issues?
Yeah, I mean, I think I did say it. It was like my own healing journey really made me want to share what I had learned with other people, because as a psychotherapist, especially, you really see what happens behind closed doors in people's lives. And there's a lot of suffering that you never see or never know unless someone told you. And I think so many people in the world today are doing their best to survive and thrive despite some of the injuries that they've sustained from other people and have not had a chance to heal. And I just wanted to be of service. I wanted to give back what I had gotten.
Okay. All right. So the next question from American Fox is, what challenges have you had to help others?
Well, the biggest challenge I think that many healing professionals have is that you're constantly confronted with your own imperfection. None of us are perfect. No, none of us are completely healed, and now we have it all together and we never make a mistake again, and all our relationships are perfect and life just works out. It's just not like that. Life in human form here today is very challenging. Personal relationships can be incredibly challenging and confronting. We all have blind spots. And so I think the challenge that I've had in helping others is just to stay abreast of my own healing journey, because I think it never ends. And I think the more we stay committed to our own healing journey, actually the more we have to offer other people, because we know how hard it is. And it breeds compassion, and it breeds patience, and it breeds deep understanding to stay on the court yourself and, face your own imperfections.
Okay. And the third question from American Fox is, what are your plans for future success?
Well, I guess I would say my plan isn't for success. My plan is to make a contribution.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess success looks like, if people receive what you have to share, that could be a plan. But what I really want to do is stay true to my own path and write my book, talk about the contents of it, share it in as many venues as I possibly can, possibly write a sequel to this book that explains even more than I was able to put in this one book. But it's really just to continue on my own path of wanting to make a contribution. And I think many people really feel that way, that if you've gotten help somewhere, you want to give back. So many people in the field, for instance, of addiction, who have been addicts and gone through a recovery process, often become addictions counselors because they want to help others along the way. And I think really it's just about being a human being. There's a lot of suffering on this earth. And if there's one person I can hold a hand for or shed a little light on their path for, I'm just all about wanting to continue to do that.
Okay. Okay. Now, in reference, I'm going to throw a little bit of shade on myself, quote unquote. I was diagnosed with anxiety and depression in 2009.
Okay.
And I made a mistake in my life that really destroyed me to a point where I could never. I feel that I can't get into another relationship because of what had happened. And also, I'm very hard on myself. So if I think something's positive, I'm going to find a way of destroying it.
Yeah.
I mean, most guests that I've had, of course they say, of course you have to love yourself and forgive yourself on it. I mean, I know that God has forgiven me and still loves me, but with me, I will never love myself or forgive myself because of what I did. And as much as I tried or attempt to, keep it to the side, I don't like to do that because then I feel like society would turn around and do like a background check on me, and find out what actually happened. And when they find out what actually happened, they're like, well, why don't you say this? Why don't you tell us the truth? And then, it goes from bad to worse. And then I'm even tougher on me because, this is not the person I'm supposed to be or who I think I'm supposed to be. Can you enlighten a little bit from that?
Well, what I would say to you is, I think a lot of people are in your place. I think many people on a small scale or on a really large scale have deep regrets about some of the choices that they've made, some of the behaviors that they've exhibited, some of the people they've hurt or the ways they've hurt themselves, or just some of the dysfunction that they have participated in. And that's painful. There's a wonderful, wonderful man. I think his name is Brian Stevenson, and he works in the criminal justice system. And one of the things that he said that I think applies to all of us, not just to people who have been incarcerated, is we are not the worst thing that has ever happened to us, and we are not the worst thing that we've ever done. We're not. Our essence is pure. We were born an innocent, pure being when we were an infant. And then we learned things, or we endured things, or we experienced things that set us up to either not be terribly functional in our lives or even do sometimes terrible things. But it's not who we are. It's a product of what has happened to us. And I think the way to find one of the beautiful gifts of good psychotherapy is that it really helps us unearth in a non-judgmental environment the negative things that we've come to believe about ourselves. like I'm not lovable, or I can never be forgiven, or I'm powerless, or I'm stupid, or I'm ugly, or I'll just never amount to anything, or I'm destined to be alone. Whatever the negative beliefs are that we've taken on, and most of us have taken on something,
Mm-hmm.
those negative beliefs are running our lives, but they're not the truth. They're just something we learned from sometimes the very unfortunate things that we have experienced and maybe done. Um, and that really good psychotherapy helps take people down into the formative experiences where they learn these negative things about themselves that they've come to believe are true. Sort of like you're saying, I'll never this and I'll never that because I did blah, blah. It's not the truth, but it feels true. Our negative beliefs feel like the truth. You are just as much a perfect, lovable, essential human being as anyone else, no matter what. And you have a right to live that, and you have a right to find that. And often that sense of our innocent perfection and beauty is buried under massive trauma of some kind or another. And the best therapy really helps take that apart and peel back the layers of negative belief and negative behavior and negative judgment, so that we can find that essential self and start to feel the compassion for what we've sustained, what we've done, find some form of forgiveness. It may require taking some further steps of responsibility or making amends or something, and reclaiming our lives. And the best psychotherapy really does help people do that.
Mm-hmm.
And I would recommend that if you haven't had that opportunity, that you give that to yourself because you deserve it.
I have attempted going to to psychiatrists, and the psychiatrist turned around and actually told me that that per se that this podcast was my therapy,
Okay.
and
Okay.
and I was like, huh? I kind of like questioned it, but as time came by, I started to realize that it was. And then I was going to a psychologist, and of course, the psychologist, all all the psychologist was saying is, "What are you going to do? What are you going to do? What are you going to do?" And not really enlightened on suggestions, because I mean, of course, they're only paid to hear you out and not tell you what really to work with. Um,
Well, I
so
would say that I think there are other forms of therapy that might serve you better. And it's first of all, one thing is it may be very true that your podcast is a part of your psychotherapy and part of your healing, because often giving to others, as we talked about before, is a part of our own healing. So that can be very, very legit, but it may not heal everything that needs to be healed inside of you. It may be a wonderful asset to your
mhm,
healing, but it may not be the whole thing. And I would suggest going to someone who does inner child work or EMDR,
mhm,
or some kind of maybe guided hypnosis, guided imagery hypnosis, or psychodynamic work, some kind of work where you actually go into the formative experiences that set you up to have the difficult experiences that you had later on in your life, so that you can peel back the layers, as we were talking about earlier, of
mhm,
what buried that essential self and has kept you from loving yourself and feeling entitled to move on and have the life that you want. It's possible to do that. And I think best psychotherapy really holds the light on that for people. Like, this is possible. And I've had many clients who've come to therapy and felt like, I'll just never get better. There's just no hope for me. There's no light at the end of this tunnel. And I always say, there is, because I've been there. I
mhm.
was there when I started. I thought everybody could heal but me. And it's just not true.
Okay. All right. So, how can people reach out to you in reference to um, the not just the book, but maybe
Yeah.
having come to you maybe for advice like I did?
Yeah, I mean, you can always contact me on my website. There's a direct way to contact me. There's a contact me button on there. My name is Phyllis Leavitt, Leavitt. I have lots of information about my book, America in Therapy, on my website, which is my name, www.phyllisleavitt.com. I have written 2 previous books about my own healing journey, A Light in the Darkness and Into the Fire, that you can also find on my website. You can find all the books on Amazon or Barnes and Noble or any of the major booksellers. I have on my website, I have lots of blogs. I have other interviews. I have lots of interviews on YouTube. I'm on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, all the major social media. You can see the kinds of things that I post and that I write about. I try to write a weekly newsletter that really has like content in it. And then if you sign up for my newsletter, which you can do very easily on my website, you will receive a free PDF, which is about how to really deal with conflict from a healthy point of view, from the lens of really wanting to resolve conflict and come back together, if possible, with the person or people you're having conflict with. How do you take responsibility for yourself without taking too much responsibility or not taking enough? How do you make amends? How do we actually navigate conflict so that it becomes part of our growth and not just a source of pain? So there's a free PDF it's like a mini course that will guide you through working some of the principles that I've come up with about navigating conflict and healing conflict. On my website, there's also a place where you can just sign in and take a quiz that will show you what your conflict type is. Are you combative and aggressive? Are you passive aggressive? Are you avoidant? Are you submissive? Or do you have a kind of mediating and healing approach to conflict? And if you don't, how can you learn that? So these are just free offerings that I give to people through my website, and I'm happy to converse with anybody who wants to have a conversation.
All right. All right, Phyllis, I thank you so much for your time. I'm sorry I couldn't push it out any longer.
That's okay. That's good.
But do check out Phyllis at phyllisleavitt.com and hopefully buy the book of American Therapy, and see how we as a country in a political way can balance ourselves back together to be in the correct direction that we should go instead of the direction we're at right now. Mm-hmm. So, Phyllis, again, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
And thank you so much for watching the Life with Joey Calvo podcast. I'm Joey Calvo. God bless you all.